Thinking Like a Christian, Understanding and Living a Biblical Worldview by David Nobel. Chapter 12, Worldviews in Conflict. Key question: why should Christians understand other worldviews? Key ideas: believers must not only ground their philosophy in Christ, but also must know how to respond to the arguments of other worldviews by offering better arguments. Key quote: we demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God. We take captive every thought to make it obedience to Christ. The Apostle Paul. Summary: the biblical Christian worldview was the nursery of Western civilization and the foundation of the American experiment in ordered liberty. Yet today, Christianity is in retreat in almost every area of our society. This retreat began over 150 years ago when the great revivals that swept the country focused on the emotions and not the mind. Later in the early 1900s, the church found itself unprepared to face the intellectual challenges of liberal theology and withdrew further into its shell, shielding itself from the primary shapers of culture, education, politics, and media. Because of the void left by the church's retreat, people of a different worldview stepped in to champion their own brand of truth. The effect of loss of a Christian influence has been predictable: an increasingly dark and tasteless society. Yet Christ directed his followers to provide a salt and light influence on society in Matthew 5:13-14. This means getting outside the confines of the church building, taking an active part in social, political, and intellectual life of our communities. In order to have this kind of influence, Christians must gain an understanding of the times in which we live, which means, at a minimum, discerning the competent worldviews that vie for our souls and the future of civilization. This entails understanding a secular humanist, Marxist, Leninist, and cosmic humanist worldview. In Acts 17, the Apostle Paul presented the gospel to people who held to a different worldview, because he understood something about their philosophy, and he used that knowledge to his advantage. He carefully observed the religious expression of the Athenians, as evidenced by their many statues of gods and goddesses throughout the city. Finding a point of common ground in their religious worldview, Paul moved to the biblical truth of God's judgment and the good news of Christ's resurrection. The Worldviews in Focus curriculum is based on the belief that by learning to contrast worldviews, students improve their overall conceptual skills. While this text presents a case for a biblical worldview, it is important for Christians to know something about other worldviews that compete for their hearts and minds. This chapter gives a brief overview of three important worldviews that every Christian should understand. But first, we must respond to the common objection: some people feel that Christians should be shielded from non-Christian views. Some even use as an example how FBI agents are trained to identify counterfeit money by looking only at the real bills, implying that Christians should study only the Bible and not waste time or energy learning about counterfeit religions. But the problem with using this illustration is that it is based on false information. FBI training does include examining fake bills. In a similar way, studying a biblical perspective alone is not enough to prepare Christians to face other worldviews, especially those taught at the university campuses of today and presented through the mass media, movies, music, and news reporting. We agree with Paul's admonition in Colossians 2:8 and 2 Corinthians 10:3-5 that a believer must not only ground his philosophy on Christ, but also must know how to demolish the arguments of other worldviews with better arguments. We do this best when we recognize the deception inherent in other worldviews. As Paul faced the religious humanists of his day in Acts 17, so the faithful and aware Christian must face the religious humanists of our day. In the West, that means facing the secular, Marxist, and cosmic varieties. The Marxist-Leninist worldview. Marxist-Leninism is a well-developed atheistic worldview. Marxist-Leninists have developed a perspective regarding each of the 10 disciples using in great detail. Often Marxism produced a champion of its perspective in the various fields, for example, I.P. Pavlov in psychology or T.D. Lysenko in biology. This alone makes Marxism worthy of study, but the main reason it is crucial for Christians to understand Marxism is that Marxism is one of Christianity's most vocal detractors. This fact becomes all the more sinister when one realizes that some Christian groups have attempted to combine their Christianity with Marxism. Evangelical voices, often referred to as the Christian left, have been known to support the Marxist position. The World Council of Churches saw no inconsistencies in holding its meetings behind the Iron Curtain before it's disintegrated. The liberal American church's position regarding Marxism does not, of course, take into account the profound incompatibility of their faith with the Marxist worldview. Some might raise the objection that the Marxist-Leninist worldview has already been proved to be a failure and completely incompatible with reality. As witnessed by the downfall of communist countries all over the world, why, in light of these events, does one need to study the Marxist-Leninist perspective? Isn't Marxist ideology dead? These are two answers to that question. First, while Marxism has crumbled in many countries, it still holds others in its death grip. Cuba and China, for example, and some African and Latin American countries under the guise of liberation theology. If even one country is held captive by Marxism, people somewhere are suffering. Marxism and Leninism hates resistance. They will crush believers in rival worldviews any way necessary, even with tanks. The second reason is that neo-Marxism is incredibly the dominant perspective being taught that many American university campuses. In an article titled Marxism in U.S. Classrooms, U.S. News and World Report notes that there are 10,000 Marxist professors on American campuses. Georgie Ann Geyer says that the percentage of Marxist faculty numbers can range from an estimated 90% in some Midwestern universities. Arnold Beichmann says that Marxist academics are today's power elite in the universities. The strides made by Marxism at American universities in the last 2 decades are breathtaking, says the New York University's Herbert London. Every discipline has been affected by its preachment, and almost every faculty now counts among its members a resident Marxist scholar. The Marxist influence has reached its most alarming height in the humanities department of American universities. With a few notable exceptions, says former Yale professor Roger Kimball, our most prestigious liberal arts colleges and universities have instilled the radical menu at the center of their humanities curriculum at both the undergraduate and the graduate level. The result of this neo-Marxist influence has been that the culture wars are sometimes the fiercest on campuses across America. With battles being waged over political correctness, multiculturalism, deconstructionism, and postmodernism, the Marxist worldview is alive and well in the American classroom. As Dr. Fred Schwartz says, the colleges and universities are the nurseries of communism. Christian students must not get caught up in these nurseries. The secular humanist worldview. Marxism, however, is not the only worldview that threatens to take the classroom hostage. Secular humanism also vies for control of education. In fact, secular humanism is the dominant worldview in our secular colleges and universities. It has even made gains in many Christian colleges and universities. Christians considering a college education must be well versed in the humanistic worldview or risk losing their own Christian perspective by default. Why? Because humanist professors are unwilling to present the Christian perspective accurately, while many Christian educators feel duty-bound to give fair representation to the humanist viewpoint. Humanists recognize the classroom as a powerful context for indoctrination. They understand that many worldviews exist, and they believe humanists must use the classroom to flush out unenlightened worldviews and encourage individuals to embrace their worldview. Christianity has been deliberately, some would say brilliantly, erased from Americans' educational system. The direction of America's education can be seen as a descent from Jonathan Edwards in 1750 and the Christian influence through Horace Mann of 1842, the Unitarian influence of John Dewey of 1933, and the humanist influence. But we contend that Jonathan Edwards was more to say than John Dewey, and that Christianity should get back into the public square and influence educational policy. The Christian worldview is a fitting competitor to Dewey's religious view. Hosea's statement, "My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge," 4:6, applies in spades to Christian college-bound students. Surveys of Christians in college reveal that many never recover from their educational befuddlement, lapsing instead into atheism, materialism, new morality, evolution, and globalism. Studies reveal that on some campuses, up to 51% of the Christian freshmen drop out of the born again category by their senior year. Others suffer from years from their near loss of faith. Those who are well prepared, however, survive and flourish. If you want more information on how to prepare for college, read Appendix C, Just for Parents. America's colleges and universities are not only areas of secular humanist influence, however. The mass media continually publish and broadcast the humanist worldview. The 1990 Humanist of the Year was Ted Turner, founder of CNN and former chief executive officer of Turner Broadcasting System. In 1985, Turner founded the Better World Society, and presently he is offering $500,000 to anyone able to invent a new worldview suitable for the new, peaceful earth. According to Turner, Christianity is a religion for losers, and Christ should not have bothered dying on the cross. Still, another reason for examining the humanist worldview is that besides Ted Turner, many humanists have gained positions of considerable influence in our society. B.F. Skinner, Abraham Maslow, Carl Rogers, Erich Fromm, all former Humanists of the Year. They have powerfully affected psychology. Carl Sagan, another Humanist of the Year, preached his humanism on a widely heralded television series, Cosmos. Norman Lear was produced and otherwise influenced a number of shows on television today. Ethical decisions are made for our young people by Humanists of the Year. Faye Wattleton, former director of Planned Parenthood. Humanist Isaac Asimov wrote tirelessly for his cause. Clearly, humanists are willing to support their worldview, often more faithfully than Christians. The Cosmic Humanist Worldview. In recent years, a fourth worldview has gained visibility across the United States, one we have labeled Cosmic Humanism. Cosmic Humanism is the broad heading for an ideology consisting of a mixture of neo-paganism, or Wicca, and neo-pantheism, better known as the New Age movement. Because it professes a marked disdain for dogma, this worldview is more vaguely defined than the other three. Indeed, some cosmic humanists go so far as to claim that their worldview has no religious doctrine or teaching of its own. This attitude, according to the New Agers, results from the belief that truth resides within each individual, and therefore no one can claim a corner on the truth or dictate truth to another. The New Age, explains Christian writer Johanna Michelson, is the ultimate eclectic religion of self. Whatever you decide is right for you is what's right, as long as you don't get narrow-minded and exclusive about it. By assuming the truth resides within each individual, however, one lays the cornerstone for a worldview. Granting oneself the power to discern all truth is a facet of theology, and this theology has ramifications that many cosmic humanists have already discovered. Some have begun grudgingly to consider their movement a worldview. Marilyn Ferguson, author of The Aquarian Conspiracy, a book referred to as the New Age watershed classic, says the movement ushers in a new mind, the ascendance of a startling worldview. This worldview is summed up in its skeletal form, agreeable to virtually every cosmic humanist, by Jonathan Adolph. In its broadest sense, New Age thinking can be characterized as a form of utopianism, the desire to create a better society, a new age in which humanity lives in harmony with itself, nature, and the cosmos. While the New Age movement still appears to be fragmented without focused leadership, it has grown at a remarkable rate. The Stanford Research Institute estimates that the number of New Agers in America can be as high as 5 to 10% of the population, 12 million or more people. Others have put that figure as high as 60 million, although this includes people who merely believe in reincarnation and astrology. John Randolph Price, a world leader of the New Age movement, says there are more than 500 million New Age advocates on the planet at this time, working among various religious groups. Further, people adhering to the cosmic humanist worldview are gaining power in our society and around the world. Malachi Martin lists dozens of organizations that are either New Age or sympathetic to New Age thinking. Barbara Marx Hubbard, a spokeswoman for the New Age, made a bid for the 1984 Democratic vice presidential nomination. In addition, Wicca is gaining new adherents, as Craig S. Hawkins writes. A threatening storm is brewing on the religious horizon. The winds of occultism are blowing even more strongly across the land. In the past 2 or 3 decades, America and much of Western Europe have seen a resurgence of paganism and witchcraft. Paganism is attempting a resurrection from the dead, a revival of the old gods and goddesses of pre-Christian polytheistic nature religions and mystery cults, Celtic, Norse, Greek, Egyptian, Roman, and other traditions in the Western world. Many come to Wicca after reading The Spiral Dance, a rebirth of the ancient religion of the great goddess in 1979, a best-selling introduction to Wiccan teachings and rituals written by Starhawk, née Miriam Simas, a witch from California. Other young people are being drawn to consider this worldview through books and films like Harry Potter, or by the influence of popular neo-pagan-oriented television shows such as Charmed or Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Some estimate there may be more than 750,000 adherents of Wicca and related neo-pagan faiths in the United States. Clearly, cosmic humanism is becoming a fourth force in the Western Hemisphere. A call to dedication. The acceptance of many of these distortions of the truth by the Christian community is our greatest shame. Countless Christians, thanks to books like Biology Through the Eyes of Faith, have accepted evolutionary theory. Many so firmly that they treat creationists as unwelcome brethren or worse. Many Christian colleges that have finally recognized the scientific weakness of theistic Darwinian evolution still shun special creationism, moving instead toward punctuated equilibrium. Other Christians are embracing various forms of Marxism and socialism, calling it liberation theology. Some have bought into the concepts of self-actualization, behaviorism, feminism, pro-choice, Western meditation, and world government. Why do Christians so easily accept inconsistencies in their worldview? It is our position that too many ignore Paul's admonition that they not be taken captive through vain and deceitful philosophy in Colossians 2:8. With respect to avoiding inconsistencies, non-Christians are much more consistent. There are no Marxist-Leninist creationists. There are no New Agers who believe in ethical absolutes. Christians who trust the Scriptures and therefore have access to the one worldview base of eternal truth should be the first to recognize the bankruptcy of secular religious views, yet, all too often, they are the first to embrace them. Obviously, the job of training Christian thinkers is not being done very well. The Christian worldview is in retreat in nearly every arena of American life, including our universities, our media, arts, music, law, business, medicine, psychology, sociology, public schools, and government. The humanistic system of values has now become the predominant way of thinking in most of the power centers of society. Claim James C. Dobson and Gary Bauer. According to Dobson and Bauer, the Christian worldview has only 2 power centers remaining in America, the church and the family, and both of them are under tremendous pressure to surrender. There is compelling evidence that our popular secularized culture is having a greater influence than either the Christian home or the church. The Nehemiah Institute surveyed Christian teenagers attending evangelical churches across the U.S. and found that in answering questions dealing with each of the 10 disciplines, these young people responded no differently than their secular humanist counterparts. And when it comes to the major political, social, economic, religious, and educational issues of our day, the results over the past 12 years demonstrate a definite trend away from biblical Christianity and toward Marxist socialism. These results point to the disturbing fact that we are losing the cultural war among Christian youth. But truth is our greatest weapon. What are we to do? Go on the offensive. Light a candle, Matthew 5:14. Pray, 2 Chronicles 7:14 and Colossians 1:9-14. Study, 2 Timothy 2:15. Understand the times, 1 Chronicles 12:32. Rebuild the foundation, Psalm 11:3. Spread the word with courage and conviction. One of America's greatest Christian statesmen, Theodore Roosevelt, looked upon the Christian worldview as a comprehensive frame of reference touching the totality of life. For him, Christianity was not just a plan of salvation, an ethical system, an exercise in mysticism for an hour or two a week, but truth. It was truth about all things, for all men, for all times. Philosophy students at Charles University in Prague, Czechoslovakia, told their professors that they had had enough of Marxist-Leninist dialect. American students can do the same, casting secular Marxist and cosmic humanism out of the classroom. But such a stand will not come easy. It will take a rebirth of morality, a revival of spiritual interests, a renewal of intellectual honesty, and a recovery of courage. It will take a shoring up of the family and a reawakening in our churches. It will take concentrated efforts to reestablish the influence of Christianity in our culture. But it can be done. To accomplish this, Christians must shore up their worldview, teach it to the young and old alike. We must immerse ourselves in Christian theology, Christian philosophy, Christian ethics, Christian politics, Christian economics, Christian psychology, Christian sociology, Christian biology, Christian law, and Christian history. Some progress has been made in this direction. Leading the way are men like Chuck Colson, who through his writings and popular daily radio commentary Breakpoint, challenged the Christian community to apply a biblical worldview in the public arena. Christian philosophers like Alvin Plantinga, J.P. Moreland, William Lane Craig, Norman Geisler have gone to great lengths to defend Christianity from its secular humanist opponents through seminars, debates, and books. Henry Morris, Duane Gish, Ken Cummings, A.E. Wilder Smith, and a host of Christian men of science have demonstrated the veracity of the creationist position. Wendell's Birds of Origin Species Revisited contains enough scientific data to sink evolutionary theory. Thaxton, Bradley, and Olson's The Mystery of Life's Origins and Davies and Kenyon's Of Pandas and People encourage the position that science and Christianity are allies. D. James Kennedy, in What If Jesus Had Never Been Born, and What If the Bible Had Never Been Written, along with Elvin J. Schmidt in Under the Influence, demonstrate beyond a shadow of a doubt how Christianity has transformed civilization through the centuries. Nearly everything good from Western civilization has its origin in Jesus Christ and his followers. This is certainly what Newsweek, March 29, 1999, had in mind when it said, by any secular standard, Jesus is also the dominant figure of Western culture. The article mentions art, science, society, politics, economics, marriage, family, ethics, body, and soul. All have been touched, and often radically transformed, by Christian influence. Still, much more needs to be accomplished to remind the world of the truth of Christianity and give encouragement for the future. We need Christian young people strong in the faith to follow Cal Thomas, Britt Hume, Tony Snow, Ann Coulter, Fred Barnes into the media, to take charge of the universities, to run for Congress, school boards, and to espouse Christian sociology with a strong emphasis on traditional family values. We need Christian artists challenging us with something that feeds the spirit and fuels the imagination. Instead of art, literature, and music fit for the cultural sewer, Christians can reclaim law, history, politics, economics, and all other disciplines. Understanding themselves to be men and women created to serve God, they can heed the call to excellence more profoundly than proponents of any other worldview. Conclusion. After working our way through a systematic analysis of the 10 major components of a worldview, our studied conclusions are that, in theology, the evidence for the existence of a personal and holy God, a designed universe, and earth prepared for human life far outweighs any argument for atheism or pantheism. In philosophy, the notion that mind, logos, precedes matter is far superior to the atheistic stance of matter preceding mind. In biology, the concept of a living God who creates life first fits the evidence better than any notion of spontaneous generation and evolution. In psychology, understanding people as inherently sinful beings in need of a savior far outweighs thinking of them as inherently perfectible and guilt-free. In ethics, the concept that right and wrong are absolutes based on the nature and character of a personal, loving, just God is far superior both theoretically and practically to any concept of moral relativism. In sociology, the biblical family of father, mother, and child transcends any experiments in trial marriages, homosexuality, and the like. In law, the notion that God hates the perversion of justice is far superior to any theory of legal relativism and positive law. In politics, the Christian belief that human rights are a gift from God, protected by government, is more logically persuasive, morally appealing, and politically sound than any atheistic theory that maintains human rights are a largess of the state. In economics, the concept of stewardship or private property and using resources responsible to glorify God is more notable than the notion of a society in which common ownership destroys individual responsibility and work incentives. In history, the veracity of the Bible and its promise of a future kingdom ushered in by Jesus Christ is far more credible than vague, utopian global schemes dreamt up by sinful, mortal human beings. Indeed, we cannot imagine one category in which the non-Christian world views outshine the Christian position. For example, putting Christian economics into practice results in prosperity and the reduction of poverty, while all forms of socialism, including the welfare state, guarantee various levels of poverty. God is indeed smarter than Plato and Marx. Putting Christian sociology into practice results in strong families and discourage societal trends towards drug use, crime, unemployment, poverty, and disease. Whereas non-Christian experimentation with the family unit, including secular humanism's self-proclaimed important role in the sexual revolution, causes society to disintegrate. Putting Christian law into practice results in Magna Carta and the U.S. Constitution guaranteeing human rights as God ordained, while the history of positive law in France for 2 centuries, in the Soviet Union for 7 years, and in the U.S. for the last half century have been a historical bloodbath. Yes, bloodbaths in the United States, 1.5 million unborn babies killed every year by abortion. Most unimportantly, of course, putting Christian theology and philosophy into practice results in salvation of the soul, Matthew 16:26, enlightenment of the mind, and a purpose for living. In other words, in every discipline, the Christian worldview shines brighter than its competition, more realistic, better explains man and the universe, is true to the Bible, is more scientific, is more intellectually satisfying and defensible, and best of all, is in keeping with and faithful to the one person who has had the greatest influence in heaven and on earth, Jesus Christ. To be faithful to Christ entails, at a minimum, taking every idea captive for Christ, 2 Corinthians 10:5, and not allowing humanistic worldviews to take us captive, Colossians 2:8. The first and last words Jesus Christ spoke to Peter were, "Follow me." He speaks these same words to us still.